This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Joining us in the huddle today is Ty McBride, founder and franchisor of Preservan. Welcome to the show, Ty.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So before we jump into Preservan, let's discuss your long history in the home services space. Tell me about McBride Homes, the company that you worked for that your grandfather started way back in the 70s.
Yeah, man. So, for sure. Like I grew up in this. My grandfather started building houses in 1972. Of course, I don't remember that. I wasn't around yet. But from my earliest memories, I was hanging out in a model home. My dad, when I was a kid, was a framer. And so that's pretty fun. My dad working on, truss roofs and, doing that whole thing. And so I've just always been around it, been around the building space, been around it. Later on, some of my first jobs were cleaning up job sites. I graduated high school in 2000, and that was the year following a major tornado that had come through our area. And so one of my first out of high school jobs was with a wheelbarrow and a tractor digging out bricks and stones out of lots that the tornado had damaged the year before. And so no, I've just been around it a long time and just kind of progressed through it in different forms and different fashions, from building houses to later on that my dad's and my grandpa's family business kind of morphed into a build back business. So after these tornadoes and hailstorms would come through, we would repair roofs, we would restore the houses, and then every once in a while, or quite a bit actually, we'd have to just rebuild them back from the ground up. And so
Very cool.
A lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a little bit of everything there, a lot of experience
sure.
as a young person. That's really cool. So fast forward to 2016, that's when you founded Preservan and subsequently franchised the model in 2022. So I like the fact that you have this 6-year kind of gap where you're really figuring out the business before you kind of flipped the switch and decided to scale it with franchising. So tell me a little bit about that experience for 6 years when you founded Preservan in Oklahoma City, kind of leading up to the launch of the franchise system.
Yeah, so I was repairing a rotting wood window in a historic neighborhood for my dad's company, and I had this idea. I think I could do this. I think I could fix windows. I kind of like it. I was looking for work-life balance. I didn't have much at the time. Loved the family business, but I didn't have much, especially with it being kind of determined by these storms. It just became so busy, and I was looking for something else. And I kind of was like, I think I could do this. I think I could create a work-life balance. I think I could do my own thing, following grandpa and dad's footsteps and build my own business.
So back then, when the storms came, you guys were super slammed, and then they weren't, you were not. So it was a little bit unpredictable.
Feast and famine.
Yeah,
we were always, it's terrible. You're always praying for bad things to happen. And it's nice to be able to help people in that situation, but at the same time, it's never really that great of experience. It's very emotional for a lot of people. Sounds like something else. And so I started repairing these rotting wood windows. I told my dad, I think I'm going to start something else. He said, Ty, that doesn't make any sense, but you go do you. So I got started doing that. And it's funny being here today, looking back, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just taking it one day, one job at a time, figuring out what the type of business I wanted to run. I'd worked for a lot of other people, and now was the time to create my version of business. And it took about 6 years to kind of really hone in what kind of business I wanted to own and operate. And once I kind of figured it out, I was like, this is really awesome. I've gone through a lot of pain to get here. I think it'd be great if others could have the experience I'm having today, not the one I had 6 years ago.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that you talked about that work-life balance, because I know that's meaningful to a lot of people. They want to earn, good money, but they also want to have their time. So
Yeah.
what is Preservan? Just like the basics. Tell us about the brand. What does it do?
Yeah, the basics is that it repairs wood rot, right? So wood is an organic material. It gets wet, and then it gets warm, and then it starts to deteriorate. Now, of course, it rots. It also can get termites and carpenter bees and carpenter ants and heck, squirrels, and even your children can tear it up. And so it's beautiful, and it's on all these homes, everybody's home, really. But it's one of those elements. And so Preservan is this really great service. It uses a proprietary epoxy system to repair the wood so those elements don't have to be replaced. And we can do this in a way that's incredibly more affordable and a lot more efficient. So we can do a project that's typically about 90% less than replacement in about 24 hours in an environmentally sustainable way. We're not throwing things away. We're not putting things in a dumpster. We're just fixing some stuff and moving on.
Yeah. And I'm going to attribute this quote to you. And if you didn't say it, you can still take credit for it. Wood is beautiful, timeless, and rotting, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure if I came up with it, but I have said that. That's exactly it.
So one thing I found interesting is you guys have created a map, and I'm sure this is with data that's provided on some national scale, that classifies the deterioration zones that kind of indicates the level of severity of wood rot from low to severe across the country, which is really interesting. You can really target areas that have more demand than other areas. And I know it depends on the climate in a general sense, but like, what's the life cycle of most exterior, like residential wood applications? How long does it last?
Modern building materials, what the manufacturers or the sellers of these wood productions, whether windows, doors, those types of things, siding, what they're looking for really is about a 10 to 15 year life. That's kind of what they're looking for. Now, of course, in some sense, it can last a lot longer than that, but in other ways, it can go a lot faster. But that is kind of the industry standard, is about a 10 to 15 year life for a new wood product.
Got it. Interesting. So you mentioned, it's cheaper than replacement. I mean, that's the obvious benefit. So why would a consumer choose to restore their stuff instead of totally replacing it? I mean, cost is definitely got to be a big part of that.
Yeah, cost is a big part, and also inconvenience. I always say that our ideal neighbor, that's what we call our customers, we call them neighbors. They live on lakes, gates, and golf courses, right? So they're typically more of the affluent type of person. And, money is part of it, but also so is convenience. If you've got a beautiful, in my area, million two home, you probably have about $200,000 worth of wood windows on it. And could you afford that? They probably could afford that, but do you want to? Do you really want to spend that kind of money to do that? I mean, there's so much better things you can do with your money on your house. You can do a pool, you can do an outdoor living space, you can redo the kitchen. Who really wants new windows? Nobody wants it. And then who wants the inconvenience that goes with it? Who wants the window salesman in your house? Nobody wants that. Who wants the construction project? Who wants your complete house opened up to the elements? All of your furniture has to be moved. You don't even want to be there during the time. It sounds like someone's trying to tear your house apart while they're trying to replace the windows. Like, nobody wants that. And that's where, so it is the money element. Of course, people don't like wasting money, but more importantly, I think a lot of times they just hate the headache and hassle. I think a lot of us right now, I hate hassle. I hate headache. And if you could show me a way that I could not have the headache and it'd be less expensive, I'm in.
Yeah, and when you say less expensive, I mean 90%, give or take. I mean, that's a pretty deep discount over doing the new stuff. So I picked up on something you said there a moment ago, that you call your customers neighbors. Why do you do that?
It's so funny. So I had this job go bad. I had this job go bad several years ago, way before we were officially like Preservan than we are now. And I was in Homeland. That's our grocery store in my local neighborhood. I was in Homeland, and I saw that customer on the aisle. But see, I was only working in my neighborhood at that time. I was building my business kind of through my neighborhood, and I saw her, and I thought for a moment to duck down the aisle and go a different way, even though I actually needed something down that aisle. I thought I'll just go around. I don't really want to face it. And I kind of internally, I said, no, I can't do that. I'm going to make sure this job goes right. And for that, I'm going to walk down this aisle and I'm going to connect with my neighbor, and I'm going to eat crow here. I'm just going to take it, and I'm going to tell her we're going to get it fixed. And that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to create and then later it's like, well, I'm going to create an organization. I'm going to create a culture amongst our team that's what we do. We don't hide out.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. Put integrity first.
That's
like
what
that.
we did, and that's what
that
we've
speaks
done.
to the integrity, and it also speaks to that you're part of the community, right? I mean, your neighbor is someone you're going to run into in the grocery store. That actually happened to you, which is great.
Yeah. And it has a larger, is we get into kind of like the marketing aspect and the way we grow our business, then it kind of also kind of helps us. Some of these areas are big cities, and so trying to think about your neighbor and your neighborhood and building a business one neighborhood at a time is something that we spend a lot of time teaching our franchisees how to do.
Very cool. So let's talk about the fundamental service you provide. How do you repair the wood rod? Is this a proprietary solution that only Preservan owners can access? Could you buy it at Lowe's or Home Depot? What are you guys using? And I mean, I'm sure it's a blend of the solution and the method.
Yeah, so we have our own epoxy product. It's called Everresin. We worked with a manufacturer to develop and release this product. It can only be offered through our franchises. There are competing things out there on the market that you could find in the deep spaces of the internet. You're not going to find this stuff on the shelf at Home Depot or Lowe's. But yeah, you can find something comparatively maybe. But it really goes more than just the product, because these products, epoxy is one of these things that you put part A and B together and you're on a clock to get them put on right. And if you don't do it right, it's completely wasted. And so product is part of it. We have our own proprietary product, but the other side of it is the way in which we do it, which is really unique to us. We have several different epoxies that we apply that both we inject into the wood to consolidate it and harden it, and then others that we can form around the wood and blend in such a way that it is virtually indistinguishable by anybody other than an expert.
So is the coloring, is that done in the mixture, or is that paint done after the fact? How does that all work?
Yeah, so sometimes with things that are not going to be painted afterwards, say a beautiful stained oak door, we've got methods to both embed a colorant into our product to match, and then create the grain on top of it as essentially kind of like a painting or a faux finish. And then there's just your typical method of just painting the area with the color matching paint.
Got it. Very cool. So you mentioned before that most jobs can be done within 24 hours. What's a typical wood repair project look like, if it's windows, doors, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, typical project for us is going to range around $1,800, and we're going to do 2, 3, 4 windows or doors at a time. And usually that project is about a 2-day project, maybe a little bit less. Technicians will show up in the morning. They will do the application process. They'll get all the rot removed. They'll drill and inject it. We also have a fungicide that we inject to completely kill it off. And then that cures overnight typically, and they come back the next day and they do the final finish and blend it in so that nobody knows. So yeah, most of our projects are in and out 2 days, which is one of the things that the neighbors appreciate from us.
Yeah, very cool. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the franchise side of the business. So who do you guys look for in a new franchise owner? Do you have a certain profile or personality or skill set that you feel would be a really good match for your brand?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because a lot of people, because of kind of the craft of it, kind of assume we're looking for maybe somebody who has experience in construction, and that would be there wouldn't be anything more further from the truth. Like what we're wanting are people who are experienced operators and managers who kind of bring that background, because we believe that the best way to grow for us is through them managing the manager and managing the technicians of the business. And being able to kind of see the bigger picture and grow into their territory through supporting and promoting the business there locally. So, so I always think like it's like that project manager type person. I always call them the captain, the person who really drive to success.
Yeah, and it kind of leads to my next question. So when you and your team are kind of vetting a prospective franchise owner, like what's your process look like to make sure that what you guys offer in Preservan is a solid fit, even for their market or their community?
Yeah. So we do something a little bit different, or at least I'm not a franchising expert, but I've heard we do something a little bit different. So I like to start with their area first. And so, a lot of times I'm still very, very active and plan to be for a long time in our recruitment process and our development process. But after we kind of have an initial get to know you call, what I like to do next is I schedule a call where we go in a deep dive of their area. And I do want to talk about that map. I do want to talk about what the creation zone is. What zone are you in? What's the opportunity? I like to talk about the housing inventory. What's the age of the houses? Because I said earlier, right, 10 to 15 years is kind of the lifespan. So we're looking for what's your housing inventory over 20 years old? Like that's something that we're looking for. And then what's your housing inventory in that really old stuff, like stuff built before 1940? Where are our unique opportunities in your area? Do you have a high percentage of golf neighborhoods or country clubs? Or do you have a high percentage of historic preservation properties like our Athens, Georgia franchise? And so those are the types of things that we really want to dive into to make sure that we're going into the right area. And honestly, I want to make sure that the candidate's excited about serving their neighbors again. Like, that's always, so when I'm going to talk about your neighborhoods and your city, I want you to be excited to serve them, because if you don't really care, I don't think you're going to ultimately be a good fit for us.
Yeah, and this is one of those businesses where once you start opening your eyes and looking around at buildings, you realize how much demand is there. And it's just a way of communicating that demand, because not everyone knows that their doors look the way they do. They're so used to seeing it, and they're so used to seeing the windows the way they are. But it's like, wow, I live in, I guess it's a zone 4 in Northern Virginia. We get cold winters, hot summers, lots of rain, lots of snow, all kinds of stuff. And, wood rots, right? So one thing that I think is pretty cool about your model is there's no brick and mortar component. So you're leasing vehicles, you're buying some initial inventory, you're hiring technicians, and I'm assuming that you can launch this business pretty quickly after training. What does that look like when you find the right candidate? They're kind of a rock star. They're ready to kind of get this thing going and become a Preservan franchise owner. How quickly after, the ink's dry on the contract are they able to start servicing neighbors?
It feels like it goes really fast. And I think it does. 60 to 90 days, most of our franchisees are on their first job, doing their first rot repair with their technicians. And it happens really fast. I mean, there's always some elements of training schedules and weather things that can get in the way of that. But it goes pretty fast. I always feel like the administrative side of getting your business started takes longer than the actual ramping up for Preservan. It takes longer, I think, to get your LLC set up and your business bank account, your insurance, than it does to actually start doing the training and set up to become a rot repair business. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for 6+ years, I guess 8 at this point, specifically with Preservan. Yeah. You're an expert at it. And the trick with franchising is taking that, all that experience that you have and then kind of transposing it onto the franchise owners. So for an emerging brand like yours, how do you guys support new franchise owners?
That is probably the thing that I think we think the most about. Though we've had some great growth, I think we think more about the support than we think about the sales. Because for me, that neighbor thing grows beyond just the my neighborhood of Heritage Hills in Oklahoma City. It grows beyond that. It grows to their neighborhood. I know their neighborhoods. I've been to some of them, right? And so for us, that's the number one component of support. I was having a conversation with our contact center team this morning, and I was telling the role that you do is the absolute most important thing that we can do every single day, because you make sure that our franchisees have an assessment to go to get them kicked off and to get them started. So we spend so much time focusing on the support element and make sure we're running a business and a franchise, an emerging franchise, right, that has the resources and the team to do that. And I think that's such a critical element and something that is at the forefront of our mind all the time.
Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, is that call center one that the franchise owners can access when their customers call in, or is that just internally with corporate?
Yeah, so it is 100% managed by us. It's part of the package, part of the deal. They can, all of the phone numbers are coming to us. And not only did I set this up because I knew it would be, it's good to have that kind of unified voice. I also set it up because I know how hard it is to run a business. You got all these things to do, and you're out there, trying to go to a real estate lunch and learn, and you see your phone's ringing. You want to take the call, but you find a napkin, you scratch it down, you forget to call the person back, or you take the call thinking, oh, this is definitely a customer, I got to take it, and you take the call and it's somebody trying to sell you another warranty. That stuff is so distracting from operating a business. So we knew that we needed a call center. The difference, I think, from us and maybe a lot of folks is I also knew that we have a really unique business model that is a little hard to communicate if you don't have any experience. So you can't just farm this out to anybody. We have our own agents who go on ride-alongs with our technicians here at our corporate office and have seen the work in person. Heck, one of them's even married to our top-performing technician, so she knows really what it's all about. So it's something that's really...
Well, I think it's super important, even in my role when I'm trying to help people find their right brand. When I've done ride-alongs with different concepts, it adds a lot more color commentary to the conversation in terms of what it's like to be in the truck and what it's like to be on site and what it's like to interact with the customer and all that. So that's really cool that your call center has that kind of context. Yeah. So let's talk about item 7. What does it cost to get one of these things going?
Yeah, so sitting here today, 2024 into 2024, I think our item 7 is 183 to 130 something. You're catching me, pop quiz, but yeah, it's one.
Yeah, so under 200K all in.
It's under 200K to go all in the right way.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's where we set on that item.
So that's going to be franchise fee. That's going to be leasing some vehicles, getting them wrapped, light equipment, initial inventory, marketing, runway of kind of working capital. That's kind of mostly what we're investing in.
Mm-hmm. All those things are in there. And, our goal with that item 7, when we go through it, and I take all of the FDD, like one-on-one calls, we go through it, is we wanted to create an item 7 that somebody could essentially, build a pro forma off of so they could really understand. So I never want to drive down the cost too much. And even though it does have that kind of that low number, that mid 80s, and that number does make sense sometimes for those smaller single markets and stuff like that. It can make sense, but we really want to make sure people understand what it costs to do business and costs to be successful, because the number one reason businesses fail is that they don't properly have their capital. They don't properly have the capital. So we want to make sure that when they come in, they have the right amount of money to be successful.
Yeah, you run out of cash, you don't have a business. So having that extra capital is needed. And most candidates that I advise, I'm saying put an extra 20% into working capital beyond whatever it's going to show you in item 7. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about everyone's favorite, item 19. Do you have any financial performance representations that you can share with us?
Yeah, for sure. So once again, 2024 into 2024, we only have at our corporate location reporting as of this point. It won't be until the end of this year in our 2025 FDD. We'll have 2 additional locations reporting as well, being a startup emerging brand. But the great news is when they look at it, what they're going to see is a very, very robust for our single corporate location. And when we do into our franchisees in 2025, it'll be the same thing. A very robust breakdown. I would call it like a modified financial statement, essentially, that kind of really lays out both total revenue, but cost of goods sold, including technician labor, their epoxy products that come from us, marketing expenses, royalties, all those things, insurance. So much of that stuff is disclosed in there to help them. Once again, my goal, I want them to just be able to look at those numbers and build a pro forma. That's always what I want someone to be able to do when they're
and one thing that really stood out to me was your really high gross profit margin at over 70%.
Yeah.
So even in the single territory that grossed, 334K,
Yep.
I mean, that's a huge margin. So you're keeping a lot of that revenue as earnings, which is really great about this model because your cost of goods is low and your cost of labor is low.
And it leaves space for those franchise owners who maybe are thinking of an executive model. They want to hire a manager to manage the technicians. They can see inside that the strategy where that is possible with that kind of gross profit margin. You can kind of imagine what a manager of two people would get paid, and you can kind of build that in if that's the thing you're looking for. Those margins allow for that. And it's been really exciting for other locations who have kind of taken that and run with it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question because I would think that this would be an ideal owner-operator model, but it's good that you also enable people that have that vision to kind of put managers in place and scale by adding additional vehicles, additional territory that you could do a semi-involved or semi-absent model.
Yeah. This one, at the end of this year, 2024, they'll have their first full calendar year. It's our Orlando location, which is kind of our flagship. Outside of our flagship of our corporate location, we always run kind of neck and neck on a per tech basis. But they came right out of the gate with the idea. These guys are really top performing construction business owners, and they were like, "Hey, we see opportunity to kind of grow in this little niche," and they made that investment, implemented a territory manager right from the onset, and saw explosive growth in their area of Orlando, Florida. Of course, it's a Zone 5, and so the trees the rot's literally growing on trees there. But it really shows both in a Zone 3 Oklahoma, where we run hours through that model, and a Zone 5 there in wet, saturated, hot, humid Florida. We're both able to kind of pull that off. And so I think it's a really great opportunity. We also love our owner operators. I love the husband and wife teams that come in and do these things together. Of course, as a dad of twin boys, I love the father-son deals. I'm not old enough. My boys aren't old enough to let them join me yet. They do hang door hangers in my neighborhood for extra money.
Hey, you got to put them to work somehow.
But I love the father-son teams as well that come in and kind of as more the owner-operator.
Yeah. Well, I just the simplicity of the model. I'm sure some jobs are more complex than others, but you guys know what you are. You know what you do. You focus on that. You're not chasing shiny objects. I think that's pretty cool. So I know you're still relatively early on in the franchise side of the business. How many owners and how many territories are we at today?
We are at 31 territories today, and we are at 12 franchise owners and 1 corporate location.
Awesome. So that shows that your average owner is in that 2 to 3 territory range, which is great. A lot of franchise, prospective franchise owners like to have some elbow room to kind of build a bigger business. So I like that you're enabling that.
Yeah.
So what have you seen as kind of a newer franchisor, some of the challenges of growing a franchise brand? I'm sure there's quite a few.
Yeah, from my standpoint, one of the biggest challenges that I've seen is that, as you're growing, and this is kind of a thing that I'm constantly working through as the founder, like I said, I like to be really active. And one of the things that really gets me is when the business starts to grow and all of a sudden, things start to change and there starts to be layers in between the leadership, the founding team, and all of a sudden there's all these people in place. And so one of our big initiatives, one of the things that's really important to us is to make sure that, I hope that regardless of how big we get, that myself and the leadership team stay really active. And not only because I think that it, maybe somebody would like that, but I think it's really great for me. I love keeping my finger on the pulse. And so what that's looked like is, I'm the kind of guy that gives his cell phone number out to all of his franchisees. I intend for that to stay that way. I love, we do mastermind calls to kind of create this culture with our franchises every single Wednesday at noon. Wednesday is Wood Rot Wednesday. And so we got to get on a mastermind together and talk about what's going on in our locations, share some leadership tips, share some news from the corporate location. My business partner, who acts kind of as our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, he's really the expert in getting in the weeds of the product and the chemistry behind the product and exactly how to do the repairs. He hosts a Technical Tuesday where everybody's just welcome. It's like kind of like office hours. Just come in, show them your pictures, show them what's going on. We use a software that we can log in and see everybody's activity as far as photo activity. And so we can see that. He can give them coaching tips and strategies to fix it, to prevent it, all those kinds of things. So our goal is just to stay really involved and not get the big head and find ourselves in a back office with a bunch of people in between us and the franchisees.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're doing everything right in the beginning, because one of the questions I was going to ask, which you just answered, was how are you delivering on promises to your founding and pioneering franchise owners? Because you're building this, this structure of a franchise system. Those first batch of owners that come in and kind of put belief in you and belief in your system, like when they produce early on and they take that huge risk and it pays off, they're going to tell the next, group a couple months down the road how you guys went above and beyond to help. And it sounds like you're doing that by having these collaborative sessions, giving out your personal phone numbers, and doing the things that an early stage franchisor does when they do it right.
I tell our franchisees, and I tell them to tell their technicians, first right, then fast. First right, then fast. And I think as a startup and emerging franchisor, I try to own that same mentality. First right, then fast. Let's get things right. And every time we get something more right, we figure something out more, better, then we can go a little bit faster. And it's just that constant improvement but focusing on the quality of your service to allow you to really then have exponential growth.
Right and fast. I like it. Makes a ton of sense. Well, this has been really interesting. Ty, anything else you want to add to the mix before we wrap up today?
No, just, if somebody wants to know about this for any reason, I just, I won't give my cell phone number out here, but you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'd love to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. And of course, gopreservan.com is our website. But the easiest thing to do is find me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and let's talk about your area.
Yeah, and I'll definitely post your link in the notes here so anybody can check it out. So if anyone listening would like to connect with Ty to learn more about becoming a Preservan franchise owner, contact me at franchiseqb.com or on X at QBFranchiseQB. I'll get you connected. Thank you so much, Ty, for taking the time to get in the huddle and discuss Preservan with us today.
Thanks, man. Later.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com. to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.